Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat. This series is all about mango decks. Mango decks are built with each card less than the price of a mango in the US, which is 98 cents. The commander is not included in the mango deck pricing, but the rest of the 99 cards will all be 98 cents or less based on the TCG price. So you can imagine the challenge of making a mango deck would be. I can't wait to show you what I built. Let's jump right into the episode. Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Threat. This is another Mango deck, episode 4 in the series. Mono black loves to have creatures enter the battlefield that are specifically black. Let's talk about that. With our commander Ayara, first of Lochtwain. Ayara costs 3 black, 2/3 elf noble. Whenever Ayara, first of Lochtwain, or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. We can tap Ayara, sack another black creature, and we can draw a card. So this deck is going to be all about black creatures entering our battlefield, specifically black creatures. Our opponents are going to lose 1 life per creature, and we have a sack outlet already on Ayara, so this is great. We can get Ayara out by turn 3, or even earlier, with mana rocks like Charcoal Diamond. We can pay 2 to get an artifact that enters tap, and we can eventually tap it for 1 black mana. Commander Sphere, Leaden Mirror, and Mind Stone are more mana rocks in the deck that are going to help us be able to cast our stuff a little bit earlier. So moving on, we do have ramp cards, but really most of them are going to be how we get lands to our hand. But let's talk about Burnished Heart. This is actually a ramp card. It costs 3, it's a 2/2 elk, but more importantly we can pay 3 to sack it, and we get 2 basic lands from our library, and we're going to put them on the battlefield tapped. Renegade Map and Traveler's Amulet are going to get lands to our hand. As for the removal of the deck, I thought it'd be cool if most of it was on creatures, so we have Plague Crafter, Shriek Maw, Merciless Executioner, and Ravenous Chupacabra. When these creatures enter the battlefield, we can remove our opponent's threats, and this can really help us in this deck because we're already doing what our commander wants. Black creatures are entering, and we get to remove our opponent's things. We also have more removal spells that aren't on creatures like Cast Down and Tragic Slip, which, by the way, Tragic Slip is such an underrated removal spell. Let me tell you why. For 1 black, we get an instant that says target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. That's not bad, but what's really important is Morbid. That creature gets -13 until end of turn instead if a creature died this turn, which in this deck is very likely, especially with our commander having a sack outlet on her. As for the board wipes, we have 2 of them with Massacre Girl and Ingarrick's Wake. With Massacre Girl, we're going to want at least a 1/1 out, whether it's ours or our opponent's, and then she has this effect where it stacks on top of another because when a creature dies, each other creature gets another -1/-1, so this can add up really quickly. And Ingarrick's Wake is just going to favor us with this board wipe because it's only going to target our opponent's creatures and our opponent's planeswalkers that we don't control. And now onto my favorite section, which is drawing cards. We have Smothering Abomination, Midnight Reaper, Liliana's Standard Bearer, and Grim Haruspex. When we sacrifice a creature, it's going to trigger Smothering Abomination, and we get to draw a card, and it helps that every upkeep we have to sacrifice a creature. Midnight Reaper is going to get us a card and deal us 1 damage when a non-token creature we control dies. When Liliana's Standard Bearer enters the battlefield, we get to draw X, where X is the number of creatures that died under our control this turn. So if we happen to sack 3 creatures, we can cast Liliana's Standard Bearer and draw 3 cards. Grim Haruspex is going to draw us a card when a non-token creature we control dies, and this time we don't have to lose life for it. So some non-creature draw spells we have is Costly Plunder, Read the Bones, Ambition's Cost, and Succumb to Temptation. If for some reason we can't cast our creatures, we always have these draw spells, and we can even sack a creature with Costly Plunder or an artifact if we really need to. So we can really abuse our commander with things that make tokens like Skursdag High Priest, Sengir Autocrat, Dreadhorde Invasion, and Ogre Slumlord. What's really important is that black creatures are entering the battlefield. It can't just be some artifact token. It has to be a black creature, and this can be easily done with these cards. Skursdag High Priest only costs 1 and a black for a 1/2 human cleric, but its morbid is we tap it, and we tap 2 other untapped creatures we control. We can create a 5/5 black demon creature token with flying. We can only activate it if a creature died this turn, which we could do if we activate our commander's ability by tapping her and sacking a creature we control. Sengir Autocrat. It enters the battlefield with 3 0/1 black Surf creature tokens, and when Autocrat leaves, it's going to exile all Surf tokens. Well, that doesn't matter because for 4 mana, we're going to deal 4 damage to each opponent, which is insane because 4 creatures are going to enter the battlefield. Dreadhorde Invasion is kind of like a Bitter Blossom if you take it in that way. For 1 and a black, it's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and you amass 1, which means if you don't already have a black zombie army token, you're going to make one. And from then, you're going to keep putting a +1/+1 counter on it. It also has whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it has lifelink. Well, what's really important is if we sack that creature that we make each turn, we're drawing a card for free. We do lose a life for it, but it's like Bitter Blossom. It's just a little weaker in a sense. Ogre Slumlord. For 3 black, it's a 3 ogre rogue. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may create a 1/1 black rat creature token, and rats you control have death touch. What's really important is it says another non-token creature dies. This can be our opponent's creatures as well. So if we remove one of their creatures, we're going to make a 1/1 black rat, and that can make each opponent lose 1 life and we gain 1 life. This is a really great card to have in the deck. So we can sacrifice our creatures that we make with Vampiric Rites, Carrion Feeder, Lampad of the Death's Vigil, and Spark Reaper. We can draw cards with Vampiric Rites, and we can draw a card with Spark Reaper, but it's very costly because we have to pay 3 mana to do so. But what's important is that we have more sack outlets because we can only tap our commander 1 time. So why not have more ways to sacrifice our creatures? When our creatures die, we're going to have ways to make our opponents lose even more life. Falkenrath Noble targets a player, they lose 1 life, and we gain 1 whenever another creature dies, so this means our creatures or our opponents. Vindictive Vampire is specifically when our creatures die. It will deal 1 damage to each opponent and we gain 1 life. Sir Conrad is all about whenever a creature enters the graveyard from anywhere. So this can be our opponents, could be our creatures. It's going to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So creatures can enter the battlefield by us sacrificing them, milling cards, destroying our opponent's creatures with removal, and he has a 1 and a black ability where each player mills a card. So there's a possibility we could deal our opponent's damage when a creature enters the battlefield from this milling. Zulaport Cutthroat for 1 and a black, it's a 1/1. When another creature you control dies, or Zulaport Cutthroat, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So when our opponent's creatures die, when our creatures die, whatever creature dies, they could possibly lose life for this. But most likely it's going to be our creatures we're sacrificing with these 4. What's really great about these cards, and I have to mention every time, if we have all 4 of these cards out on the battlefield, that's 4 damage per creature. If we sacrifice 1 creature, it's 4 damage, right? Well, if we sacrifice 3 creatures, that's 12 damage. This can easily add up. If we sack 10 creatures, we can kill an opponent, which is really crazy. Moving on, we can return our creatures with weird effects like Sanitarium Skeleton and Reassembling Skeleton. They have abilities where if they're in the graveyard, we can pay that cost and bring them back to the battlefield tapped. So no matter what, we can always have a creature entering the battlefield. We can even sacrifice it with our commander and then pay that mana to get it back. We're going to need to protect our commander with cards like Minion's Return and Kaya's Ghost Form. Since cards like Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves are a little bit outside of the budget, we have these cards that kind of do the same thing because Minion's Return says, when an enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So if they use a removal spell on our commander, we get her right back. Same with Gaia's Ghost Form. If the permanent dies or is exiled, we get to return that card to the battlefield under our control. Next, I have to talk about the slam dunks in the deck, like Grimoire of the Dead, Infernal Genesis, Aberrant Overlord, Command the Dreadhorde. These cards do work because we can win the game just like that, with creatures entering the battlefield under our control. If you're not familiar with Grimoire of the Dead, it takes 3 counters to sack it. We put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield under our control. The great thing is, they're black zombies in addition to their colors and types. So this means it's going to trigger our commander's ability to make our opponents lose 1 life for each creature that's black that enters the battlefield. Infernal Genesis costs 4 black. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the top card of his or her library into their graveyard. He or she puts X 1/1 black minion creature tokens into play where X is that card's converted mana cost. We can easily make 3 1/1 black minions because we discarded some removal spell or whatever. That's more ways to make our opponents lose life. Aberrant Overlord. When it enters the battlefield, we're going to get 1/1 black harpy creature tokens where our devotion to black is. So it's already giving us 2 black. Our commander is 3 black, so we can at least make 5 tokens with Aberrant Overlord. That's 6 black creatures that are going to enter the battlefield. That's 6 damage to each opponent. This is a great card to have. Now, my favorite is Command the Dreadhorde for 4 black. Choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the converted mana cost of those cards. Put them on the battlefield under your control. With all the life we're gaining, we can easily win the game with this. We can have every creature. Now, of course, this doesn't make them black in addition, like Grimoire of the Dead. So we got to be a little more careful with that. Again, these are the slam dunk cards of the deck. These are going to help us win the game. Now, if you're wanting to upgrade the deck, we can easily do this by replacing the protection with Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. We can equip this to our commander and make her more protected, and we can do this in a more permanent fashion by giving her Hexproof or Shroud. You can put these two cards in for Minion's Return and Kaya's Ghost form. Ashnod's Altar is a great sack outlet, and we can replace this with Lamphads of the Death Vigil. We have to pay 1 to sack a creature. Each opponent loses 1 life, we gain 1 life. Well, if we don't have to pay mana to sack a creature, this is really going to help us to use our mana for other things. And we actually make mana when we sacrifice a creature with Ashnod's Altar. So, a really good card is Plague of the Vermin for 6 black. It's a sorcery. It says, starting with you, each player may pay any amount of life. Okay. Repeat this process until no one pays life. Each player puts 1/1 black rat creature tokens into play for each 1 life he or she paid this way. With all the life we're gaining, we can easily wipe out the board. If we pay 40 life, each opponent's going to lose 40 life because we make 40 1/1 black rat creature tokens. And we can replace Plague Vermin for Infernal Genesis. And the reason why I want to do this is because Infernal Genesis helps our opponents because they're also getting black creatures whenever they mill a card. This is going to make it where they could pay life, but why would they? Because we're going to wipe out the board if we have our commander in Plague Vermin. If it's not countered and we have more than 40 life and our opponents have less than, we just win the game. This is an easy include in the deck. This was so much fun to build. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button, comment below what you think of the deck and the upgrades, and subscribe for more Mango content. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.